Carlsbad, People, Purpose, and Impact, an essential podcast for those who live, work, visit, and play in Carlsbad.
Good afternoon and welcome everyone. My name is Brett Schanzenbach. I am the president and CEO of the Carlsbad Chamber of Commerce. I am your host today, and I'm excited to have with me Mr. Josh Williams. Josh is the founder and president of Thunder Rugby, which is a Carlsbad rugby club. Josh, thanks for joining us today.
Brett, thanks for having me. This is it's great to Friday afternoon to talk about rugby and what's going on in Carlsbad.
Yeah. And this is going to be fun because this is a exploratory topic for me. So I'm excited to learn. So Thunder Rugby is a club, but it's got a pretty broad age range, it looked like on your website. So Tell us a little bit about the history of the club. When did it start? Right. What was the inspiration behind it? And then we'll dig in more.
Great. So I actually started coaching about 12, 13 years ago, and I was coaching U8s, and actually at our neighboring club, which is called the Coastal Dragons. Okay. They're down in like Encinitas and kind of just a little bit south of here. And so after coaching the youngsters for a year, two of the other coaches with Dragons said, hey, we need to start a club a little further north. Carlsbad, Oceanside, Vista, those kids really are not able to play. So let's do that. So in 2011, we started a club with just the youngsters, U8s and U10s. Okay. Right. And as they grew older, our club grew older. And
the club expanded as they moved up the levels.
Right. So in about 2018, 2019, we had full basically U8s through U18s. Wow. We had it, the U8s or U12s are co-ed, but then after U12s, they split, right? Okay. So we have older boys and older girls. Oh, great. And then we started in 2015, we started Carlsbad High School as kind of a complimentary rugby club that was going in the high school season, and then we had a club season kind of right after that. So wow, you got a lot going on. Yeah. So that's kind of the origins.
It started with basically one team, one age group.
Actually, we started at two age groups. Yeah, we had U8s and U10s.
U8s and U10s, right? And then, and so now you have how many different teams all told, if you could guesstimate? We have 9 teams, and we're supporting 2 high school programs as well. Wow, 9 teams and 2 high school programs. That's a great... And that's all in about roughly 11 years.
Yeah, and we the pandemic definitely slowed us down a little bit. Yes. We basically took a year off, but we were able actually to really work and focus and spend some time training because the kids didn't have much else to do. And in 2021, that team, that was the first time we kind of were full U18s. That team went to the Nationals and won the national championship. So
yes, that's how you kind of got on our radar. You guys are national champions. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it was a really hard, pandemic was a really hard time, and that was something that we could really focus on. And it turned out to be a real blessing just because we were able to kind of just focus on each other, and school wasn't, it was just it was really building a team through that hardship.
So you started coaching U8s down in Encinitas, but before that, did you have a history? Like, did you play rugby as So tell us how you got into rugby initially.
So it's funny. I was not able to play. We did not. I grew up out in East County of San Diego, and we did not have rugby. But I had some friends that were from England and said, hey, you would like this. They knew I ran track, and I played American football, and I played soccer. And they're like, I think you'd like this. And so I went back to school in D.C. in George Washington, went out and joined the rugby team, and right away it was and I'd run, like I said, I played all these other sports, but right away that was my sport. The running, the contact, the kind of the chaos of it all I loved, and my best friends are still guys that I played rugby with, and those are those are my brothers, and so I learned from them, and so I played quite a bit through college, and then after college I got injured, and so I took a little bit of a break. But then, my wife and I had kids, and once the kids turned about 5 or 6, that's when got me back into coaching, and that got me back into kind of all of it again.
Well, that's amazing. So you have this personal history. You start a club, and your club within 11 years. Well, no, what year did you guys win the national?
Yeah, it was 10 years.
10 years. So within 10 years, you go from just 2 teams to competing and winning a national championship.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good success story.
I mean, it was just, like I said, I think we were blessed, and we had a lot of things come together. I mean, I think at the end of the day, these things require hard work, they require commitment, they require a little luck, right? And I think and a little bit of blessing from, we had a lot of people that supported us, and it was a very cool experience.
Very cool. So we're going to take a brief pause. We're talking to Josh Williams, the founder and president of Thunder Rugby here in Carlsbad. And when we come back, we're going to explore rugby a little bit more, learn about the ins and outs of their season, and don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. So, Josh, we were talking about the success of your club over a relatively short period of time, but I want to know, with football, American football, as you phrased it, being so popular, how does rugby gain the foothold that it really needs to, continue to grow and be dynamic? When I think of youth sports, I think soccer is so popular, right? Yeah. And then, but by the time you get to high school, at least for the boys, football seems to kind of dominate. So how do you guys get that exposure and foothold?
I mean, it's funny you brought those two sports up, because those are really kind of the two foundations of rugby. Rugby came out of soccer about 250 years ago. One of the guys picked up a soccer ball and started running with it because he's tired of the guys running around. They started tackling them, and rules came out of that, and that was in kind of northern England. And then out of rugby, came American football and the forward pass and all of that. And I think there's some important lessons to be learned from both sports for rugby to grow. But there's also some unique parts of rugby I think that are really important. I mean, I think one of the things that's really important to us in rugby, why I think we can gain a foothold, is because of the culture. The culture of the game is, it's definitely a team, a team sport. I think, you can say all of them are team sports, but we have 15 players on a side. It takes all body types. My son's, 5'8", 160 pounds, and then his teammate is Ollie, who's 340 and 6'4", right?
Wow.
And so it allows all body types, which I think is cool. But it also, there's a culture, a team. For us, Thunder Rugby is built on the idea that we love to win, we love to compete, but ultimately we're developing leaders for good.
Nice.
And our core values are humility, our respect, our camaraderie, that striving for excellence. Those are the things that really drive the sport for us. So I think people that play it and get an opportunity to, there's a real brotherhood and camaraderie that comes out of that as well.
That's awesome. And so I'm guessing a lot of people listening to this might be like me and have only had tangential exposure to rugby, maybe seen a little bit here and there. And I honestly don't know what's going on when things are going on the field. And I would need somebody to walk me through kind of what's happening here and what's happening there. But I don't know if it was your website or another one that said, it definitely mentioned that it was a combination of soccer and football. It also mentioned wrestling, combination of wrestling, soccer, and football. Tell us a little, what's a scrum, and walk us through this a little.
Yeah, I mean, I think simply rugby's an invasion game, and what that means is you're trying to get your ball, you're trying to get the ball through, Football, the one big difference, and soccer is you can pass the ball forward.
Okay.
Right? So the big difference in rugby is when we pass, the ball has to go backward.
Okay.
There's no forward pass. It always has to go back. If the ball gets passed forward, it's an infringement. The ball goes, the possession goes to the other team. But basically, simply you're trying to get the ball through backwards passes, or you can kick the ball forward, but if you kick the ball forward, your players have to be behind you. So in that sense, it's a little similar to, there's an offsides rule in rugby there is in soccer, right?
Sure.
So it really, like I said, if you understand American football and you understand soccer, rugby's kind of in between. It has the flow of soccer and the movement, and some of our best rugby players are soccer players that can tackle. Right, that's the challenge. Yeah. Right, the American football players are great because they're good in contact.
Yes.
Right, and the wrestling, our contact though is more like wrestling than football because we don't have pads.
Yeah.
We don't. The idea of hitting or all our tackles have to be low. If you tackle above kind of the waist, it's an infringement. You can't do that. So so that's why the wrestling and that body control and that leverage is really important. But I mean, I think one of the nice things is there's 15s, which is what we play, and there's also sevens, and sevens is what they play in the Olympics. And sevens is just 7-a-side, and you can kind of see the game's a little simpler, right? And the scrum is just how they restart. If the ball gets, goes out of bounds or somebody has some sort of infringement, they restart with a scrum.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting that you said about the tackling kind of below the waist, because I was wondering with the lack of pads, how you don't have like just concussion city, all the sport or the contact sports, even soccer and of course football are much more sensitive and focused on safety and avoiding the concussions these days. Is that a big deal in rugby?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all of us as coaches have become really aware of that, and I will say. We have a lot of football players, and we would love to have football players come play rugby with us first, because the way we tackle, and Pete Carroll up at Seattle Seahawks has really advocated learn how to tackle rugby style, and I've actually gone to some American football practices and help with their tackling, because our tackling really leads with our shoulders.
Sure.
So one of the things our head's really not involved in the tackle, and our head is always behind, and there's kind of this protocol we go through, and it's kind of, I think, how American football is really going in that direction, because what they found is the helmet helps a little bit, but you really don't want your head in the tackle, and rugby, because we don't have helmets, it can't be.
It's
right?
not going to be
it's
there.
It's not sustainable. So
you're not going to go slam heads without a helmet on. No, that makes sense. So when is the season? How long is the season? That kind of thing. What makes up your guys' the Thunder's normal season?
Yeah. So this is the preseason right now, and so we kind of have. There's kind of two seasons. So the younger kids kind of are basically 5 years old up through middle school. We basically start training in November, and we have games in kind of that go through January through March.
Okay.
Right? And
kind of that winter season.
That winter kind of beginning and going into spring, whatever.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's our younger kids. The older kids so the high school age kids have basically two short seasons.
Okay.
So they have the high school season, which kind of goes January and February, and then they have the club season. And so soccer is very similar to that. Soccer will have, the kids in high school, they'll play high school soccer, and then they'll go play club. Right. And so we do kind of the same thing, but, our high school season is kind of January to February, and then we do club kind of, March, April, May, and then we'll play some sevens in summer.
No, that makes sense. Now, at the high school level, do the majority now of high schools, let's just say San Diego County, do the majority of them have rugby teams, and do they have them for each gender, or how is that all working out?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of I would put it was similar to the way soccer was maybe like 20 years ago.
Okay.
Right? I've always said we're about 20 years behind, and I think I think rugby is going to follow more of the soccer model in terms of clubs kind of have to go the way, and it goes high school, but it's still, if you look at soccer, kind of the best programs are kind of club driven, whereas American football is really high school. High school is the kind of the perennial. I think the clubs are important, but we're seeing some good high school programs. Carlsbad's actually what we call a multi-school program. So we have a good chunk of kids from Carlsbad High, but we also have kids from El Camino, right? And that's a close school, and we get a few kids from Oceanside and a few kids from Army Navy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And at the end of the day, our focus and Thunder's focus has always been giving kids from all backgrounds, the opportunity to play.
Yeah.
And we like to consider Thunder a little bit of the UN, and that we have kids from all backgrounds, all ethnicities, all sizes, all of that. And that's an important part of our kind of club culture.
In club sports, like, one of my sons played club soccer and whatever, there's quite a bit of travel involved. I'm assuming your club teams have that same thing where they're traveling, all over. Yeah,
I mean, the youngers really don't as much. Southern California and San Diego County particularly is kind of a rugby hotbed.
Oh, nice.
Nationally. So if you look at nationals, 2 years ago, we won the national championship. Last year, we won the Tier 2 national championship. So, but if you look at the best clubs, 4 or 5 of the best clubs in the country are in California, and most of them are in Southern California.
Wow.
So there's a lot of, the Mustangs, Belmont Shore, Raptors, Thunder. These are all top-ranked clubs in the country, and they're all within, from Long Beach down to, Carmel Valley.
So you're not having to travel far to get good competition and fill up a schedule.
We like to do one trip. And nationals is usually pretty long, but we've had some teams from like Texas will come. Wow. They typically come to us because we have that kind of that concentration of kind of good teams.
And is it played on? It looks like it's played on a typical, what we would call a typical football field.
Football, soccer, we use them both.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense. And then where were nationals held the year you guys won? Where did you go?
So we Missouri, Kansas City, Missouri, and then last year they were in Indiana, Elkhart, Indiana.
Okay, so, Midwest.
And they just have these really it's funny. You could tell they have these beautiful fields, right? And they're all over the place, right? And it's funny because in Southern California, fields are such a premium. We're always
challenged,
scrambling to find a field, and they're all over these.
And then competing with the other teams to get on those fields, the other sports, to get on those fields.
Right.
Yeah, and they have tons of them. Well, that's awesome.
Hey, I think one of the things I just wanted to tell you as well, Brett, is in 3031, the Rugby World Cup will be in the U.S., and so there's going to be a big push. This will be an opportunity where U.S. will really be the center stage of rugby. So
where will they be hosted?
I think they haven't decided that.
Okay.
They've decided that USA is going to be the host country, but I'm given the popularity and the strength of rugby in San Diego and in LA, I'm sure there will be at least some games in the Southern California region.
And has it been in the U.S. before, the Rugby World Cup?
So they had the Sevens World Cup was in San Francisco a few years ago and went to that. A lot of fun. But this is the 15s, which is kind of the bigger deal. That's where the All Blacks are, and you'll get kind of all the best teams in the world will be here, and it'll be a really big deal. Something cool to look forward to.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that it looks like, again, from like your website, that some of the folks who have come through your program are playing well beyond high school now and other programs. Tell us about that.
Yeah, no, that's really exciting. We had two of our players this year go represent the U.S. And played in Europe and played some teams in Europe. And and then that's an important part of kind of what we're doing. We also had 10 of our players are playing Division I college.
Wow.
And I'm getting to
10 of your Thunder players?
Yeah.
Wow.
And so we're getting more and more of our players are playing in college. And I think, again, the thing I love, and I was never very big, right? But I got, when I went to George Washington, I became the captain of the team. And
sure.
The nice thing, what I love about it, if you put in the work and you put in the time, size doesn't drive it as much of your success.
Right.
My son, who played, one of those players that played for the USA and is now playing up at Cal Berkeley, right? He's 5'7", 160 pounds.
Nice.
It's the work, right? And that's really important. It's really the most important muscle to your brain. We need smart players. It's definitely a sport that requires players to have a really high rugby IQ.
That is awesome. It's awesome that it feels like it's a little more, as you're saying, like open. Because if we're honest, like you're going to reach a point in football, even honest in basketball, like you're not going to be 5'7" and make it very far in the basketball world, right? In football, there's going to be, if you just weren't given that gift of a certain body size, you're going to peter out at some point, and that's not because of lack of heart or skill, but there's just a point where it's going to be tough to compete. And that's great that seems, your sport seems to transcend that. So that's really cool. So if somebody's hearing about this for the very first time and they want to get their little one involved, whatever age their son or daughter might be, what's the best place to start?
Yeah, start on our website, and we're just, we're opening up registration next week for the upcoming season.
Nice.
We will have some clinics in October, so I think the first one is October 16th, so kids can come down and it'll be Sunday afternoon, and I think we're at Buena Vista. Just come and try. And we, like I said, we start kids from 5 years old and they go up to 18. And we, when the kids are young, we do a co-ed. And then when they hit about 13, we split them up into, older boys and older girls. So we do the whole range. But I would also say too, I'm a big believer that I love all kids to try rugby. At U8, it's touch. At U10, they're tackling, but it's, it's very slow and kind of controlled.
Sure.
And then, but I would also say too, rugby's not for everybody. It's definitely a contact sport, but we love kids to give it a try. And, if you like it, for me, like it was for me, the first game, I'm like, oh, that's for me. Some kids, it takes a little while, but I do think it's a good compliment. I think it'll make. So both of my boys played soccer and rugby, and I think it definitely made their soccer games better.
Nice.
And we have a lot of football players that have played rugby, and it's made their football, particularly their tackling, and their kind of contact a lot more effective because they're coming in, they're leading with their shoulder, they're driving, kind of the legs. And so, I think it helps those other sports, but it's also, there's a good book. David Epstein just wrote a book called Range, and one of the findings of that is some of the best professional athletes tend to play multiple sports when they're young.
Yeah.
And I really think, and I've really advocated for my kids to do that. And, and at some point, again, when you hit, later in high school, particularly your sophomore, junior, you probably have to focus. And that's what kind of the research showed about that 15 years, kind of when but up until 15, go try stuff, have fun.
Right.
Anyway.
It's a great point because, when I was a kid growing up, you just kind of went from season to season, little league, and then soccer, and then basketball, or whatever your sports were, and you just kind of went from thing to thing, and then by high school you typically focus. But I'm a little bit older. When I was going through high school, you still did have people who lettered, air quotes, in 2-3 sports. Yeah, right. And that wasn't phenomenally uncommon. And now that seems completely foreign. Like kids, gosh, like 10, 11 years old, they're spending their whole year in X or Y, and whether it's volleyball or baseball or whatever, they're just like completely dialed in. It's like, man, they might have a lot of fun trying a couple other things.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is we've over specialized too young, and I think at the end of the day, I will say one of our key metrics of success: do the kids have fun? Do they come back?
Right.
And I really think at the younger levels, we as coaches, and I spend a lot of time coaching myself and coaching our coaches, really working on the coach. But we have to really focus on the idea of fun and the idea of trial and error and trying new stuff. And, I think we want a level of specificity and specialization that we really shouldn't be pushing for until the kids really have a clear direction and they're a year or two from going into college, right? Because I get it when they get older, but I think up until like 14 or 15, I really advocate for all of my rugby players, go play another sport, go do something else, go, go have fun. Because, if sports aren't fun, then they're not, kids aren't going to be great, right? I mean, if you're looking at it just from a purely competitive perspective, if they don't love it and have fun with it, they're probably not going to keep doing it for very long.
I coached youth basketball for like 7 years, I think about 15 teams amongst many of my children. And I remember a guy saying once to a group of us coaches that when kids are little, parents convince their kids to come try something because they convince them it's going to be fun. And later in life, kids convince their parents to stop putting them in a sport because it's no longer fun, And so if it's not fun, there's, we're missing the point.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the big points, at least. Well, that's great. Well, thanks so much for taking the time, coming down and sharing with us today. I hope you guys have another great, successful season, and we hear about other national championships. But either way, hopefully your sport continues to grow and, like you said, raise up great kids.
Listen, appreciate it, Brett, and love what you're doing. Thank you, and appreciate the support of the Chamber. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on our Carlsbad People, Purpose, and Impact podcast today. If you enjoyed it, please hit the follow button on wherever you get your audio, and please tell a friend. We would love to hear your feedback, which you can share at carlsbadpodcast.com. You can leave us a review, ask a question, or leave an audio comment, which we can play on the show in the future. And that's all we have for today. Can't wait to see you next time on Carlsbad People, Purpose, and Impact. And remember, share some kindness today. It's free, creates goodwill, and makes you feel great.